The rain poured relentlessly over the bustling streets of New York City, mirroring the turbulent emotions swirling within Sophia Martinez's heart. As she stood beneath the awning of a quaint coffee shop, her trembling fingers clutched a crumpled invitation, an elegant piece of stationery that seemed to mock her very existence. The elaborate golden script announced the engagement party of William Blackwell III and Sophia Martinez, to be held at the prestigious Blackwell estate. Sophia's eyes, a deep shade of brown that usually sparkled with warmth, now glistened with unshed tears. How had her life come to this point? Just a year ago, she was a simple girl from the Bronx, working multiple jobs to make ends meet and support her ailing grandmother. Now, she found herself engaged to one of New York's most eligible bachelors, thrust into a world of opulence and scrutiny she never asked for. As the memories of the past year flooded her mind, Sophia couldn't help but recall the fateful day she met William. It had been a typical hectic morning at the diner where she waited tables. The place was packed, and she was running on fumes after pulling a double shift the night before. In her rush to serve a particularly demanding customer, she had collided with a tall, handsome stranger, spilling hot coffee all over his impeccably tailored suit. "I'm so sorry," Sophia had exclaimed, mortified by her clumsiness. She grabbed a handful of napkins and started dabbing at the man's jacket, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. To her surprise, instead of anger, she was met with a hearty laugh. "Well, that's certainly one way to wake up in the morning," the stranger had said, his blue eyes twinkling with amusement. That stranger was William Blackwell III, and from that moment on, Sophia's life had changed forever. Their whirlwind romance had been the talk of the town, the handsome, wealthy heir to the Blackwell fortune falling for a humble waitress from the wrong side of the tracks. It was like something out of a fairy tale, and for a while, Sophia had allowed herself to believe in the magic of it all. But reality had a harsh way of asserting itself, and nowhere was this more evident than in the cold reception she received from William's family. The Blackwells were old money, with a lineage that could be traced back to the earliest days of New York's high society. They looked at Sophia as if she were a stain on their pristine family tapestry, a gold digger who had somehow ensnared their precious son and heir. Victoria Blackwell, William's mother, was particularly vicious in her disdain. Her icy blue eyes seemed to strip Sophia bare every time they met, judging every imperfection and perceived flaw. "William, darling," she would say in that honey-coated voice that dripped with condescension, "are you sure about this, girl? There are so many suitable young ladies from good families who would be delighted to have you." Even now, as Sophia steeled herself to enter the lion's den that was the Blackwell estate, she could hear Victoria's words echoing in her mind. The engagement party was supposed to be a joyous occasion, a celebration of love and new beginnings. Instead, it felt like a trial by fire, with Sophia as the accused standing before a jury of New York's elite, all too eager to find her wanting. Taking a deep breath, Sophia stepped out into the rain, hailing a taxi with a trembling hand. As she slid into the back seat, giving the driver the address of the Blackwell estate, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was heading towards her own execution. The taxi wound its way through the city streets, leaving behind the familiar sights of Sophia's old life and venturing into the rarefied air of the Upper East Side. The buildings grew taller, more ornate, each one a testament to the wealth and power of its inhabitants. Finally, they pulled up to a magnificent brownstone that seemed to dwarf its neighbors, the Blackwell estate. Sophia paid the driver and stepped out, her simple yet elegant dress immediately dampened by the persistent drizzle. She looked up at the imposing structure, its windows glowing warmly against the gray sky, the sound of laughter and classical music drifting out into the night. For a moment, she considered turning back, fleeing to the safety and simplicity of her old life. But then she thought of William, of his kind smile and the love that had bloomed between them against all odds. With renewed determination, she straightened her shoulders and climbed the steps to the front door. The door swung open before she could knock, revealing a smartly dressed butler who regarded her with a carefully neutral expression. "Miss Martinez, I presume," he intoned, stepping aside to allow her entry. Sophia nodded, handing over her rain-soaked coat and trying not to fidget under the butler's appraising gaze. She could already hear the whispers and feel the stares as she made her way towards the grand ballroom where the party was in full swing. The room was a vision of luxury, with crystal chandeliers casting a soft glow over the assembled guests. Men in expensive suits and women dripping in jewels mingled, their laughter tinkling like the champagne glasses they held. Sophia felt like an intruder in this world of wealth and privilege, her every movement scrutinized and found lacking. "Sophia!" William's voice cut through the crowd, and she turned to see him striding towards her, a broad smile on his handsome face. He looked dashing in his tailored tuxedo, every inch the scion of a powerful family. As he reached her, he pulled her into a warm embrace, seemingly oblivious to the disapproving glances from those around them. "I was beginning to worry," he murmured, planting a gentle kiss on her cheek. "Is everything all right?" Sophia forced a smile, not wanting to burden him with her doubts and fears. "Everything's fine," she assured him. "The rain just slowed me down a bit." William's brow furrowed slightly, sensing the tension in her voice, but before he could press further, they were interrupted by the arrival of his parents. "William, darling," Victoria Blackwell's voice rang out, saccharine sweet yet laced with an undercurrent of disapproval. "You must introduce us to your friend." Sophia felt her heart sink as she turned to face William's parents. Victoria was the epitome of upper-class elegance, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her designer gown accentuating her slim figure. Beside her stood William Blackwell II, a distinguished-looking man with salt and pepper hair and piercing blue eyes that mirrored his son's. "Mother, father," William said, his arm tightening protectively around Sophia's waist, "you remember Sophia, my fiancé." Victoria's smile never wavered, but her eyes grew colder. "Of course, how could we forget? It's lovely to see you again, dear. I do hope you're not finding all of this too overwhelming." The condescension in her tone was unmistakable, and Sophia felt her cheeks burn. "Not at all, Mrs. Blackwell," she replied, striving to keep her voice steady. "It's a beautiful party. Thank you for hosting it." William Sr. stepped forward, offering his hand to Sophia. His grip was firm, almost painfully so, as he shook her hand. "Yes, well, only the best for our son and his chosen partner." The pause before the last word spoke volumes about his true feelings. As the evening wore on, Sophia found herself increasingly isolated. William was constantly pulled away by well-wishers and business associates, leaving her to fend for herself in a sea of hostile faces. She overheard snippets of conversation, each one a dagger to her heart. "Can you believe William is actually going through with this?" a woman in a red gown whispered to her companion. "Marrying a waitress from the Bronx? It's positively scandalous." "I hear she's already pregnant," another voice chimed in. "Why else would he tie himself to someone so beneath his station?" Sophia felt her eyes sting with unshed tears. Is this what they all thought of her? A gold digger, a tramp who had trapped William with a pregnancy? The truth couldn't be further from their cruel assumptions, but she knew that in their world, the truth mattered far less than appearances. Seeking a moment of respite, Sophia slipped away from the main ballroom and found herself in a quiet study. The walls were lined with leather-bound books, and a large mahogany desk dominated the room. She ran her fingers along the spines of the books, marveling at the wealth of knowledge contained within these walls. "Quite the collection, isn't it?" a gravelly voice startled her from her reverie. Sophia turned to see an elderly man seated in a high-backed leather chair, a crystal tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. "I'm sorry," Sophia stammered, "I didn't mean to intrude. I was just looking for a quiet place." The old man waved off her apology with a gnarled hand. Nonsense, my dear. Sometimes we all need a break from the vultures out there. He gestured towards the ballroom with a wry smile. Come, sit with me for a moment. Hesitantly, Sophia perched on the edge of a nearby armchair. The old man studied her intently, his rheumy eyes sharp with intelligence. So, you're the one who's turned young William's head, eh? Sophia, isn't it? She nodded, unsure of how to respond. The old man chuckled, taking a sip of his drink. Don't look so frightened, child. I'm Harold Blackwell, William's great-uncle. The black sheep of the family, you might say. Sophia's eyes widened in recognition. She had heard whispers about Harold Blackwell, the eccentric relative who had eschewed the family business to pursue a life of adventure and philanthropy. William spoke of him fondly, though she had gathered that the rest of the family viewed him with a mixture of embarrassment and disdain. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Blackwell, Sophia said sincerely. William has told me so much about you. Harold's face creased into a warm smile. Has he now? All good things, I hope. Though knowing my family, I doubt they've shared many flattering stories. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Tell me, my dear, how are you holding up in this den of vipers? The kindness in his tone, so at odds with the cold reception she had received from the rest of the family, broke something inside Sophia. Before she knew it, she found herself pouring out her heart to this virtual stranger, her fears, her insecurities, the constant feeling of being judged and found wanting. Harold listened patiently, his expression growing more thoughtful with each word. When Sophia finally fell silent, he reached out and patted her hand gently. My dear girl, he said, his voice filled with compassion, you have more strength in you than you know. Don't let them break you. Sophia blinked back tears, touched by his kindness. But how can I compete with all of this? She gestured helplessly at their opulent surroundings. I have nothing to offer, William, no money, no connections. Ah, but you have something far more valuable, Harold interrupted, his eyes twinkling. You have a good heart, and from what I've seen, you truly love my great-nephew for who he is, not for his name or his bank account. That, my dear, is worth more than all the gold in the Blackwell vaults. Before Sophia could respond, the door to the study burst open, and William rushed in, his face flushed with concern. Sophia, there you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. He paused, noticing the room's other occupant. Uncle Harold? What are you doing here? Harold chuckled, rising slowly from his chair. Just getting acquainted with this lovely young lady of yours, William. You've chosen well, my boy. He winked at Sophia before shuffling towards the door. Now, if you'll excuse me, I believe I hear the siren call of the open bar. You two have much to discuss, I'm sure. As the door closed behind Harold, William turned to Sophia, his brow furrowed with worry. Are you all right, love? You disappeared so suddenly, I was worried. Sophia managed a small smile, warmth blooming in her chest at his concern. I'm fine, William. It was just a bit overwhelming out there. William's face fell, understanding dawning in his eyes. They've been awful to you, haven't they? My family, the other guests. I'm so sorry, Sophia. I should have been there for you. It's not your fault, Sophia assured him, reaching up to cup his cheek. I know this isn't easy for anyone. Your family has certain expectations, and I'm not what they had in mind for you. William's eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and determination. To hell with their expectations, he said fiercely. I love you, Sophia. You're kind, and brave, and beautiful, both inside and out. You make me want to be a better man. That's worth more than any pedigree or trust fund. Sophia felt tears pricking at her eyes, overwhelmed by the depth of emotion in William's voice. "I love you too," she whispered. "But are you sure I'm worth all this? The gossip, the disapproval. I don't want to come between you and your family." William pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "You are worth everything to me," he said softly. "We'll face whatever comes together. I promise you, Sophia, I will always choose you." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Sophia felt a glimmer of hope ignite in her heart. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever obstacles William's family might throw in their path, they would face them together. And for now, in this moment, that was enough. Little did Sophia know that fate had a twist in store, one that would shake the very foundations of the Blackwell family and test the strength of her love for William in ways she could never have imagined. The Blackwell estate buzzed with activity in the days following the engagement party. Servants scurried about, preparing for the upcoming wedding that was to be the social event of the season. Amidst the chaos, Sophia found herself increasingly isolated, a stranger in what was supposed to be her new home. Victoria Blackwell had taken charge of the wedding preparations, steamrolling over any suggestions Sophia dared to make. "Darling," she would say, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "leave it to those of us who understand these things. We wouldn't want to embarrass the family with some quaint ideas." Each dismissal was a dagger to Sophia's heart, but she held her tongue, not wanting to cause any more friction than already existed. She found solace in the quiet moments she shared with William, stolen kisses in the garden and whispered promises of a future together. One particularly trying afternoon, after enduring another of Victoria's thinly veiled insults during a dress fitting, Sophia escaped to the library. She curled up in a window seat, losing herself in the pages of a well-worn copy of Pride and Prejudice. The irony of her situation mirroring Elizabeth Bennet's wasn't lost on her. "Ah, I see you have excellent taste in literature," a familiar gravelly voice interrupted her reading. Sophia looked up to see Harold Blackwell shuffling into the room, a twinkle in his rheumy eyes. "Mr. Blackwell," Sophia greeted him warmly, grateful for a friendly face. "I didn't realize you were still here." Harold chuckled, easing himself into a nearby armchair. "Please, call me Uncle Harold. And yes, I've decided to stick around for a while. Someone needs to keep an eye on this circus, after all." Sophia smiled, touched by the old man's kindness. Over the past few days, Harold had become something of an ally, offering words of encouragement when the rest of the family's coldness became too much to bear. "Now then," Harold said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "what's troubling you, my dear? And don't tell me it's nothing. I may be old, but these eyes still see plenty." Sophia hesitated, not wanting to speak ill of her future in-laws. But something in Harold's gentle gaze broke down her defenses. "It's just... I feel so out of place here," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "No matter what I do, it's never good enough. Mrs. Blackwell, Victoria, she looks at me like I'm something she scraped off her shoe." Harold's expression darkened. "Ah, yes. My dear niece-in-law has always had a talent for making others feel small. But let me tell you something, Sophia. Victoria Blackwell wasn't always the paragon of high society she pretends to be." Sophia's eyes widened with curiosity. "What do you mean?" The old man settled back in his chair, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Well, it's not my story to tell, but let's just say that Victoria's own background isn't as spotless as she'd have everyone believe. Perhaps that's why she's so determined to keep you at arm's length. You remind her too much of herself, once upon a time." Before Sophia could press for more details, the library door swung open, revealing William. His face lit up at the sight of Sophia, but quickly clouded with concern as he noticed her reddened eyes. "What's going on here?" he asked, moving to Sophia's side and taking her hand. "Uncle Harold, you're not filling my fiancé's head with your wild stories, are you?" Harold raised his hands in mock surrender. "Wouldn't dream of it, my boy. Just having a pleasant chat with this charming young lady. Now, if you'll excuse me, I believe it's time for my afternoon nap." With a wink at Sophia, he shuffled out of the room, leaving the couple alone. William turned to Sophia, his blue eyes filled with worry. "Are you all right, love? You've seemed distant lately." Sophia forced a smile, not wanting to burden William with her troubles. "I'm fine, really. It's just been a bit overwhelming, all these wedding preparations." William's brow furrowed, not entirely convinced. "Sophia, you know you can tell me anything, right? If my family is making you uncomfortable." "No, no," Sophia interrupted hastily. "Everything's fine. Your family has been very welcoming." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but she couldn't bring herself to come between William and his family. William studied her face for a long moment before sighing. "All right, if you say so. But promise me, if anything's bothering you, you'll tell me. We're in this together, remember?" Sophia nodded, allowing herself to be pulled into William's strong embrace. As she breathed in his familiar scent, she silently vowed to be stronger, to prove to the Blackwells that she was worthy of their son's love. Little did Sophia know that fate was about to throw her a curveball that would test her resolve in ways she could never have imagined. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within the Blackwell estate. Sophia was awakened by a commotion in the hallway outside her room. Throwing on a robe, she opened the door to find servants rushing about in a panic. "What's going on?" she asked a passing maid, who looked at her with wide, frightened eyes. "It's Mr. Blackwell, miss," the maid whispered. "He's had a heart attack. They've rushed him to the hospital." Sophia felt her own heart lurch. William's father, the imposing patriarch of the Blackwell family, struck down so suddenly? She rushed to get dressed, her mind racing with worry for William and what this might mean for their future. As she made her way downstairs, she found Victoria in the foyer, barking orders at the staff while simultaneously speaking rapidly into her cell phone. The older woman's normally perfectly coiffed hair was in disarray, and her face was pale with shock and fear. Victoria's eyes narrowed as she spotted Sophia. Ending her call abruptly, she strode over, her heels clicking ominously on the marble floor. "Well," she said, her voice brittle, "I suppose you'll be wanting to accompany us to the hospital." Sophia nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. "Of course. William must be devastated. I want to be there for him." A sneer twisted Victoria's elegant features. "How convenient for you. A family tragedy, and here you are, ready to play the supportive fiancé. I wonder, did you have anything to do with this?" Sophia recoiled as if she'd been slapped. "What? Mrs. Blackwell, how could you even think?" "Oh, please," Victoria hissed, leaning in close. "Don't play innocent with me." A nobody from the Bronx, suddenly engaged to one of New York's most eligible bachelors? And now, just as the wedding approaches, my husband falls ill. It's all very convenient, wouldn't you say? Sophia felt tears pricking at her eyes, shock and hurt warring within her. "Mrs. Blackwell, I love William. I would never do anything to hurt him or his family." Victoria's laugh was cold and bitter. "Love? You don't know the meaning of the word. All you see is dollar signs, my dear. But mark my words, I will not let you destroy this family. One way or another, I will see you gone." With that ominous threat hanging in the air, Victoria turned on her heel and stalked out of the house, leaving Sophia trembling in her wake. The ride to the hospital was tense, with Victoria pointedly ignoring Sophia's presence in the back of the limousine. As they pulled up to the emergency entrance, Sophia spotted William pacing anxiously outside, his handsome face drawn with worry. The moment he saw Sophia, William's expression softened. He pulled her into a tight embrace, burying his face in her hair. "I'm so glad you're here," he murmured. Victoria cleared her throat loudly, causing the couple to break apart. "William, darling, how is your father?" she asked, her voice suddenly soft and maternal. William ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "They've taken him into surgery. Some kind of blockage in his arteries, they said. We won't know more for a few hours." As they made their way to the waiting room, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She glanced over her shoulder to find Victoria's cold eyes boring into her, filled with suspicion and barely concealed hatred. The hours crawled by, each minute stretching into an eternity of worry and silent tension. Sophia did her best to comfort William, holding his hand and offering words of reassurance. But she could feel Victoria's gaze on her constantly, like a physical weight pressing down on her shoulders. Finally, after what seemed like days, a tired-looking doctor emerged from the operating room. "Mrs. Blackwell?" he called, and Victoria leapt to her feet. "Yes, that's me. How is my husband?" The vulnerability in her voice surprised Sophia. For the first time, she saw beyond Victoria's icy exterior to the frightened woman beneath. The doctor's expression was grave. "Mr. Blackwell made it through the surgery, but I'm afraid there were complications. He's stable for now, but the next 24 hours will be critical." Victoria swayed on her feet, and William quickly moved to support her. Sophia hung back, unsure of her place in this family moment. As William led his mother away to speak further with the doctor, Sophia found herself alone in the waiting room. She sank into a chair, her mind whirling with the events of the day. How had everything gone so wrong so quickly? "Quite a day, eh?" Harold's gravelly voice startled her out of her reverie. The old man settled into the chair next to her, his face creased with concern. Sophia nodded, unable to find words to express the turmoil in her heart. Harold patted her hand gently. "Don't let Victoria's words get to you, my dear. She lashes out when she's afraid. It's her way of trying to control the uncontrollable." Sophia turned to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "But what if she's right? What if I don't belong here? Maybe it would be better for everyone if I just left." Harold's grip on her hand tightened. "Now you listen to me, young lady. You have just as much right to be here as anyone. William loves you, and that's what matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Before Sophia could respond, William returned, his face drawn with exhaustion. "They're moving Dad to the ICU," he said, collapsing into the chair on Sophia's other side. "Mom's going to stay with him tonight." Sophia wrapped her arm around William's shoulders, pulling him close. "I'm so sorry, love. Is there anything I can do?" William shook his head, leaning into her embrace. "Just stay with me? I don't think I can be alone right now." As Sophia held William, murmuring words of comfort, she caught sight of Victoria watching them from across the room. The older woman's expression was unreadable, a mix of fear, anger, and something else, something almost like regret. In that moment, Sophia made a silent vow. No matter what Victoria thought of her, no matter how difficult things became, she would stand by William's side. She loved him, truly and deeply, and she would prove to everyone, including herself, that she was worthy of that love. But little did Sophia know that the true test of her resolve was yet to come. For as William Blackwell II fought for his life in the ICU, events were being set in motion that would shake the very foundations of the Blackwell empire, and Sophia would find herself at the center of a storm that threatened to tear apart everything she held dear. The days that followed were a blur of hospital visits, hushed conversations, and sleepless nights. William threw himself into managing the family business in his father's absence, while Victoria maintained a near-constant vigil at her husband's bedside. Sophia did her best to support them both, running errands, liaising with doctors, and trying to keep the household running smoothly. It was during one of these errands that fate threw Sophia another curveball. She was at the Blackwell Enterprises headquarters, delivering some documents William had forgotten at home, when she quite literally ran into a familiar face. "Oof!" Sophia exclaimed as she collided with a solid chest, sending papers flying everywhere. "I'm so sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going." "Sophia? Is that you?" The deep, resonant voice sent a shock of recognition through her. Sophia looked up into the handsome face of James Rodriguez, her ex-boyfriend from her days in the Bronx. "James? What are you doing here?" James grinned, his brown eyes twinkling with the same mischief she remembered. "I could ask you the same thing, chica. Last I heard, you were waiting tables, and now here you are in the halls of power." As they gathered the scattered papers, James filled her in. He had landed a job in the IT department of Blackwell Enterprises a few months ago, working his way up quickly thanks to his natural talent with computers. "But what about you?" he asked, his gaze traveling appreciatively over Sophia's designer outfit, a gift from William she still felt uncomfortable wearing. "You look like you belong here now." Sophia hesitated, unsure how to explain her complicated situation. "It's a long story," she said finally. I'm engaged to William Blackwell." James's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "William Blackwell? As in, the William Blackwell? Damn, girl, you've moved up in the world." Something in his tone made Sophia bristle. "It's not like that," she said defensively. "I love William. It has nothing to do with his money or position." James held up his hands in surrender. "Hey, no judgment here. I'm happy for you, Sophia. Really." His expression softened. "You deserve all the good things in life." Before Sophia could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air. Well, what do we have here?" Sophia turned to see Victoria Blackwell striding towards them, her heels clicking ominously on the polished floor. The older woman's eyes darted between Sophia and James, a calculating gleam in their icy depths. "Mrs. Blackwell," Sophia stammered, taking an involuntary step back. "I was just delivering some papers for William." "I see," Victoria said, her tone dripping with suspicion. "And who is your friend?" James stepped forward, offering his hand with a charming smile. "James Rodriguez, ma'am. I work in IT here at Blackwell Enterprises." Victoria ignored his outstretched hand, her gaze fixed on Sophia. "How interesting that you should run into an old acquaintance here, of all places. The world is full of such coincidences, isn't it?" Sophia felt her cheeks burning under Victoria's scrutiny. "It's not, we just—" "Save your explanations," Victoria cut her off coldly. "I'm sure William would be fascinated to hear all about this chance encounter." With a final, withering glare, she swept past them towards the elevators. As soon as Victoria was out of earshot, James let out a low whistle. "Damn, chica. Is she always like that?" Sophia nodded miserably. "That's my future mother-in-law," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. James's expression softened with sympathy. He reached out, squeezing her shoulder gently. "Hey, don't let her get to you. You're still the same strong, beautiful Sophia I remember." If anyone can handle this, it's you." His words, meant to comfort, only served to increase Sophia's turmoil. As she made her way back to the Blackwell estate, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. On one hand, seeing James had been a reminder of her old life, of the simplicity and freedom she sometimes missed. On the other, it had reinforced just how much her world had changed and how precarious her position in it truly was. Back at the estate, Sophia found William in his father's study, poring over financial reports. He looked up as she entered, his face lighting up with a tired smile. "There you are," he said, rising to greet her with a kiss. "I was starting to worry." Sophia melted into his embrace, feeling a pang of guilt at the warmth and trust in his eyes. Should she tell him about her encounter with James? About Victoria's thinly veiled threats? She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat as she saw the dark circles under William's eyes, the new lines of worry etched into his handsome face. "Is everything all right, love?" William asked, sensing her hesitation. "You look troubled." Sophia forced a smile, making a split-second decision to shield him from more stress. "I'm fine, just tired." "How are you holding up?" William sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "It's been challenging. The board is getting restless with Dad out of commission. There are whispers of a potential takeover attempt if we show any weakness." Sophia's eyes widened in alarm. "A takeover? But Blackwell Enterprises has been in your family for generations." "I know," William said grimly. "That's why I can't afford any distractions right now. The next few weeks will be critical." As if on cue, Victoria swept into the room, her face a mask of concern. "William, darling, I've just had the most disturbing conversation with Johnson from legal. It seems there are some irregularities in the company's offshore accounts." William's brow furrowed. "Irregularities? What kind of irregularities?" Victoria's eyes flicked to Sophia, a calculated gleam in their icy depths. "Perhaps we should discuss this in private, dear. It's a rather sensitive matter." Sophia felt her heart sink as William nodded. "Of course." "Sophia, would you mind giving us a moment?" "Sure," Sophia said, trying to keep the hurt from her voice. "I'll just go check on dinner preparations." As she left the room, Sophia could feel Victoria's triumphant gaze boring into her back. Once again, she found herself on the outside looking in, a stranger in what was supposed to be her future home. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity at Blackwell Enterprises. William was rarely home, working long hours to stave off the looming threat of a hostile takeover. When he did return to the estate, he was distracted and short-tempered, his mind clearly still at the office. Sophia did her best to be supportive, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was losing William to the pressures of his family legacy. Victoria, meanwhile, seemed to take a perverse pleasure in excluding Sophia from family discussions, always finding a reason why certain matters were too sensitive for outsider ears. It was during one of these lonely evenings that Sophia found herself wandering the grounds of the estate, seeking solace in the meticulously manicured gardens. As she rounded a hedge, she nearly collided with Harold, who was seated on a stone bench, gazing thoughtfully at a bed of roses. "Ah, Sophia," the old man said warmly, patting the space beside him. "Come, sit with me a while. These old bones could use some young company." Grateful for the friendly face, Sophia settled onto the bench. For a few moments, they sat in companionable silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "You know," Harold said finally, his voice soft with memory, "I first met my Elizabeth in a garden much like this one. She was the gardener's daughter, and I was the foolish young heir who thought he could have anything he wanted." Sophia turned to him, intrigued. She had heard whispers about Harold's past, but never the full story. "What happened?" Harold's eyes twinkled with mischief. I learned very quickly that Elizabeth was no prize to be won. She had a mind of her own and a spirit fiercer than any society debutante I'd ever met. It was refreshing. Did your family approve? Sophia asked, already guessing the answer. Harold let out a bark of laughter. Approve? My dear girl, they were apoplectic. A Blackwell marrying the help? It was unthinkable. My father threatened to disown me, cut me off without a penny. Sophia felt a chill run down her spine, the parallels to her own situation all too clear. So what did you do? I married her anyway, Harold said simply. Gave up my inheritance, my place in the family business, everything. We moved to a tiny apartment in the city, and I got a job as a junior accountant at a rival firm. You chose love over money and status, Sophia murmured, a lump forming in her throat. Harold nodded, his expression turning wistful. Best decision I ever made. We had 50 wonderful years together before cancer took her from me. But you know what? I never regretted it, not for a single day. He turned to Sophia, his roomy eyes suddenly sharp with intensity. The question is, my dear, what will you choose? When the moment comes, and believe me, it will come, will you have the courage to fight for what truly matters? Before Sophia could respond, they were interrupted by the sound of raised voices coming from the house. William's angry tones carried across the garden, followed by Victoria's shrill protestations. I'd better go see what all the fuss is about, Harold said, rising slowly from the bench. He patted Sophia's hand gently. Remember what I said, my dear. The truth has a way of coming out, one way or another. Best to face it head-on. As Harold shuffled back towards the house, Sophia remained on the bench, her mind whirling with the implications of his story. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the figure approaching until a shadow fell across her. Well, if it isn't the future Mrs. Blackwell, all alone in the moonlight. How poetic. Sophia's head snapped up to see James standing before her, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. James? What are you doing here? He shrugged, his casual demeanor at odds with the formal surroundings. I had some sensitive documents to deliver to Mr. Blackwell. Figured I'd take a little detour through the gardens on my way out. It's not every day a guy from the Bronx gets to see how the other half lives. Sophia stood, suddenly aware of how close James was standing. You shouldn't be here, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. If anyone sees us. What? They might get the wrong idea? James took a step closer, his eyes glinting in the moonlight. Or maybe, the right one? Sophia's heart began to race, a mix of fear and something else she didn't want to name. James, please. I'm engaged. I love William. Do you? James challenged. Or do you love the idea of being Mrs. William Blackwell III, with all the perks that come with it? Anger flared in Sophia's chest. How dare you? You don't know anything about my relationship with William. James held up his hands in mock surrender. Hey, I'm just calling it like I see it. The Sophia I knew would never have let herself be pushed around by some snooty society types. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe you've changed. His words hit Sophia like a physical blow. Had she changed? Had she compromised too much of herself in her efforts to fit into William's world? Before she could formulate a response, a new voice cut through the night air, cold and dangerous as a steel blade. Well, isn't this cozy? Sophia whirled to see Victoria standing at the entrance to the garden, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Behind her stood William, his expression a mix of confusion and growing anger. William, Sophia gasped, her mind racing to explain the situation. It's not what it looks like. But Victoria was already moving, her voice rising to a shrill crescendo. I knew it! I knew you couldn't be trusted. William, can't you see? She's been playing you for a fool all along. William's face hardened, his eyes darting between Sophia and James. Sophia, what's going on here? Who is this man? James stepped forward, his easy charm now tinged with a hint of defiance. James Rodriguez, sir. I work in IT at Blackwell Enterprises. Sophia and I, we have a history. The color drained from William's face. A history? What kind of history? Sophia felt as if the ground was crumbling beneath her feet. William, please, let me explain. But Victoria was already pouncing, her words dripping with venom. Oh, I think it's quite clear what's going on here. Our little gold digger got tired of waiting for her payday and decided to hedge her bets. Tell me, dear, how long have you been carrying on this sordid little affair? Affair? Sophia sputtered, shock and indignation warring within her. There is no affair. James is an old friend, nothing more. William's jaw clenched, his eyes cold with hurt and betrayal. An old friend you never thought to mention? An old friend you meet in secret, in our gardens, in the middle of the night? It's not like that. Sophia pleaded, reaching for William's hand. He jerked away as if her touch burned him. I think you should go, William said, his voice flat and emotionless. Both of you. James didn't need to be told twice. With a final, almost pitying look at Sophia, he turned and strode out of the garden. Sophia stood rooted to the spot, tears streaming down her face. William, please, she begged. You have to believe me. I love you. Only you. For a moment, something flickered in William's eyes, a hint of the love and trust they had shared. But then Victoria was there, her arm around her son's shoulders, her voice a soothing murmur. Come, darling. You've had a shock. Let's get you inside. As Victoria led William away, she turned back to Sophia, triumph gleaming in her cold eyes. I warned you, she hissed. I told you I would see you gone. Pack your things and be out by morning, or I'll have security throw you out like the trash you are. With that parting shot, Victoria swept back towards the house, leaving Sophia alone in the moonlit garden, her world crumbling around her. For what felt like hours, Sophia stood frozen, her mind struggling to process the devastating turn of events. How had everything gone so wrong so quickly? She wanted to run after William, to make him understand, but she knew it would be futile. Victoria had won, at least for now. With a heavy heart, Sophia made her way back to the house. As she passed the study, she heard raised voices once again. Curiosity overcoming her better judgment, she paused by the partially open door. Can't believe you're falling for this, William. Victoria's voice rang out, shrill with indignation. That girl has been playing us from the start. Who knows what secrets she's been feeding to her, friend in IT. The timing of this takeover attempt is hardly a coincidence. Mother, please, William's voice sounded weary, defeated. Sophia wouldn't, she's not capable of such deception. Victoria's laugh was cold and bitter. Oh, my naive boy. You have no idea what people are capable of when money and power are at stake. Mark my words, that girl will be the ruin of this family if you let her stay. There was a long pause, and Sophia held her breath, silently willing William to defend her, to see through his mother's manipulations. Finally, William spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Perhaps you're right. I've been so blind. Sophia felt her heart shatter. Stumbling away from the door, she rushed to her room, choking back sobs. As she threw her meager possessions into a suitcase, her mind raced, trying to make sense of the nightmare her life had become. She had come to the Blackwell estate with nothing but her love for William and her dreams of a better future. Now, those dreams lay in ruins, destroyed by suspicion, jealousy, and Victoria's relentless scheming. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, Sophia took one last look around the room that had been her home for the past months. Her gaze fell on a framed photo of her and William, taken on the day of their engagement. They looked so happy, so full of hope for the future. With trembling hands, Sophia picked up the photo, tracing William's smiling face. Despite everything, she couldn't bring herself to leave it behind. Tucking it into her suitcase, she squared her shoulders and walked out of the room, head held high. As she made her way down the grand staircase, suitcase in hand, Sophia was startled by a figure emerging from the shadows. "Going somewhere, my dear?" Harold's gravelly voice was tinged with sadness. Sophia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Harold sighed, shaking his head. "I had hoped it wouldn't come to this. Victoria has always been a force to be reckoned with, but I never thought she'd stoop so low." You believe me?" Sophia asked, hope flaring in her chest. Harold's eyes twinkled with a hint of his usual mischief. "Of course I do. I may be old, but I'm not blind. I see the way you look at my great-nephew. That's not the look of a gold digger or a schemer. That's love, pure and simple." Sophia felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "But it doesn't matter now. William, he believes I betrayed him." Harold's expression turned thoughtful. "Perhaps. Or perhaps he's just confused, caught between his heart and the expectations that have been drilled into him since birth." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, ornate key. "Here. Take this." Sophia accepted the key, turning it over in her palm. "What is it?" "The key to a safety deposit box at Granite Trust Bank," Harold explained. "Inside, you'll find some documents that might shed some light on our family's complicated history. Use the information wisely, my dear. And remember, the truth always finds a way." Before Sophia could ask for more details, the sound of footsteps echoed from above. Harold quickly ushered her towards the door. "Go now, quickly. And Sophia? Don't give up on William just yet. True love is worth fighting for, no matter the odds." With a final, grateful smile at the old man, Sophia slipped out of the Blackwell estate and into the uncertain dawn of a new chapter in her life. As she hailed a taxi on the street, Sophia's mind whirled with questions. What secrets lay hidden in Harold's safety deposit box? Could they really help her clear her name and win back William's trust? And even if they could, did she have the strength to keep fighting in the face of such overwhelming opposition? The taxi pulled away from the curb, carrying Sophia towards an uncertain future. But as she watched the Blackwell estate recede in the rearview mirror, she felt a spark of determination ignite in her chest. She had lost everything once before and clawed her way back. She could do it again. Victoria Blackwell may have won this battle, but Sophia Martinez was far from defeated. The war for her future, and for William's heart, was just beginning. Little did Sophia know that her journey was about to take her down a path she could never have imagined, one that would uncover long-buried secrets, test the limits of her love, and ultimately force her to confront the truth about her own past. The taxi wound its way through the bustling streets of New York City, a stark contrast to the rarefied air of the Blackwell estate. As the familiar sights and sounds of her old neighborhood came into view, Sophia felt a mix of nostalgia and trepidation wash over her. She directed the driver to stop in front of a modest apartment building, her grandmother's home, and the only place she had left to turn. As Sophia paid the fare and gathered her meager belongings, she couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. How many times had she dreamed of escaping this life of struggle and hardship? And now here she was, right back where she started, with nothing to show for her grand adventure but a broken heart and a mysterious key. Taking a deep breath, Sophia climbed the worn steps to her grandmother's third-floor apartment. The familiar scent of arroz con pollo wafted through the hallway, bringing a lump to her throat. She raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. What would her abuela say when she saw her? Would she be disappointed? Angry? Before Sophia could decide, the door swung open, revealing the weathered face of Elena Martinez. "Mija," her grandmother exclaimed, pulling Sophia into a bone-crushing hug. "I knew you would come home to me." Sophia melted into her grandmother's embrace, the tears she had been holding back for so long finally spilling over. "Abuela," she sobbed, "I've made such a mess of everything." Elena stroked her granddaughter's hair soothingly. "Shoo, mi amor. Come inside. Whatever has happened, we will face it together." Over steaming mugs of café con leche, Sophia poured out the whole sordid tale, her whirlwind romance with William, the constant battles with Victoria, the misunderstanding in the garden, and finally, her ignominious expulsion from the Blackwell estate. Elena listened patiently, her wise eyes filled with understanding and compassion. When Sophia finally fell silent, emotionally exhausted, Elena reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Mija. Life has not been kind to you. But remember, you come from strong stock. Martinez women do not break easily. Sophia managed a weak smile. "I don't know, abuela. This time, it feels different. Like I've lost everything." Elena's eyes sparkled with a hint of mischief. "Everything? What about that mysterious key your William's uncle gave you?" Sophia blinked in surprise. In the emotional turmoil of the past few hours, she had almost forgotten about Harold's parting gift. She fished the ornate key out of her pocket, turning it over in her palm. "Granite Trust Bank," she murmured. "But what could possibly be in that safety deposit box that would help me now?" Elena shrugged, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "There's only one way to find out, mi amor. But first, you need to rest. Tomorrow is soon enough to unravel more mysteries." As Sophia settled into her old bedroom that night, surrounded by the remnants of her past life, she found her mind drifting to William. Was he thinking of her? Did he regret sending her away? Or had Victoria's poisonous words taken root, convincing him that Sophia had never truly loved him at all? With a heavy sigh, Sophia reached for her phone, her finger hovering over William's number. But what would she say? How could she possibly explain everything in a way that would make him understand? In the end, she set the phone aside, unshed tears burning in her eyes. Some wounds were too fresh, some chasms too wide to bridge with mere words. As she drifted off into a fitful sleep, Sophia's dreams were haunted by visions of the Blackwell estate, of William's face twisted with hurt and betrayal, and of Victoria's triumphant smirk. But through it all, one image persisted, the small, ornate key that now felt like a lifeline to a future she could barely imagine. The next morning dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself was urging Sophia to shake off the gloom of yesterday and face whatever challenges lay ahead. After a hearty breakfast of her grandmother's famous huevos rancheros, Sophia set out for Granite Trust Bank, the mysterious key clutched tightly in her hand. The bank was an imposing structure of marble and glass, its very architecture designed to intimidate those who didn't belong to the world of high finance. Sophia smoothed down her simple sundress, feeling acutely aware of how out of place she must look among the suits and designer outfits of the other patrons. At the reception desk, she was met with a raised eyebrow and a cool, "May I help you?" Sophia straightened her spine, channeling every ounce of the confidence she had felt as William's fiancé. "Yes, I need to access a safety deposit box. I have the key here." The receptionist's demeanor changed instantly upon seeing the ornate key. "Of course, madam. Right this way, please." As Sophia was led through a maze of corridors to a secure vault area, she couldn't help but wonder at the power of appearances. One small key had transformed her from a suspicious interloper to a valued client in the blink of an eye. The vault manager, a distinguished older gentleman named Mr. Hawthorne, greeted Sophia with practiced politeness. "Mrs. Blackwell, I presume?" he asked as he examined the key. Sophia's heart clenched at the name, but she simply nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Mr. Hawthorne led her to a private viewing room, where he used Sophia's key in conjunction with the bank's master key to open a large safety deposit box. "I'll leave you to your privacy, madam," Mr. Hawthorne said with a slight bow. "Please ring the bell when you're finished." As the door closed behind him, Sophia took a deep breath and opened the box. Inside, she found a thick manila envelope addressed simply to the true heir of Blackwell. With trembling hands, Sophia opened the envelope and began to read. What she discovered inside would shake the very foundations of everything she thought she knew about the Blackwell family, and about herself. The documents told a tale of secrets, lies, and a legacy built on sand. William Blackwell I, the founder of the Blackwell fortune, had not been the self-made man of legend. Instead, he had stolen the seed money for his empire from his business partner, a brilliant but naive inventor named Martinez. Sophia's eyes widened in shock as she read on. The Martinez in question was none other than her own great-grandfather, Diego Martinez. He had developed a revolutionary manufacturing process that would have made him a fortune, but William Blackwell I had cheated him out of the patent rights, leaving the Martinez family destitute while the Blackwells rose to prominence. But that wasn't all. The final document in the stack was a letter from Harold Blackwell himself, dated just a few weeks ago. In it, he explained that he had spent years uncovering the truth about his family's ill-gotten gains. He had always intended to make things right, but fear of tearing his family apart had held him back, until he met Sophia. "My dear," Harold wrote, "from the moment I saw you, I knew you were special. Not just because of your love for William, pure and true as it is, but because of the strength and kindness that radiate from your very being. You are everything the Blackwell family should aspire to be, and it is my fervent hope that through you, the wrongs of the past can finally be set right." The letter went on to explain that Harold had secretly amended his will, leaving a significant portion of his personal fortune, separate from the main Blackwell estate, to Sophia. "Consider it a down payment," he wrote, "on the debt my family has owed yours for generations." Sophia sat back, her mind reeling from the revelations. She was now a wealthy woman in her own right, with the power to challenge the Blackwells on their own turf. But more than that, she held in her hands the truth that could unravel the entire Blackwell legacy. As the full implications of what she had discovered sank in, Sophia felt a mix of emotions swirling within her. Anger at the injustice done to her family, vindication in the face of Victoria's cruel treatment, and a deep, abiding sadness for William, who would soon learn that his entire life had been built on a lie. What should she do with this explosive information? Part of her, the part still raw from the pain of rejection, wanted to march straight to the press and expose the Blackwells for the frauds they were. But as she imagined the look of devastation on William's face when he learned the truth, she felt her resolve waver. No, she decided. Whatever she did next, it wouldn't be out of vengeance. She was better than that, better than Victoria, better than the legacy of lies that had shaped the Blackwell empire. She would use this knowledge, and the resources Harold had left her, to forge a new path, one that would honor her family's legacy while still offering a chance at redemption for the man she loved. With newfound determination, Sophia gathered the documents and left the bank, her mind already formulating a plan. Her first stop was a prestigious law firm, where she retained the services of a sharp-eyed attorney named Rachel Goldman. Together, they began the process of validating the documents and preparing for the legal battle that was sure to come. As days turned into weeks, Sophia threw herself into her work. She pored over financial records, consulted with experts in patent law, and began to build a case that would be impossible to ignore. All the while, she kept tabs on the Blackwell family through news reports and business journals. Things were not going well for Blackwell Enterprises. The whispers of a hostile takeover had grown to a roar, and William was fighting a losing battle to keep control of the company. Victoria's increasingly erratic behavior was making headlines, with rumors of heavy drinking and public outbursts tarnishing the family's carefully cultivated image. Through it all, Sophia's heart ached for William. Despite everything that had happened, she couldn't forget the love they had shared. She knew that what she was about to do would hurt him deeply, but she also believed that in the long run, the truth would set him free from the weight of his family's sins. Finally, after months of preparation, Sophia was ready to make her move. With Rachel by her side, she marched into Blackwell Enterprises, past the startled receptionist and straight to the boardroom where an emergency shareholders meeting was in progress. As Sophia burst through the doors, all eyes turned to her in shock. William, looking haggard and defeated at the head of the table, paled at the sight of her. Victoria, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the ravages of stress and alcohol, leapt to her feet with a screech of outrage. "You!" Victoria snarled. "How dare you show your face here, you little gold digger?" Sophia stood tall, meeting Victoria's gaze with steely determination. "I'm not here as William's ex-fiancée, Mrs. Blackwell. I'm here as a major shareholder and the rightful heir to a legacy that was stolen from my family generations ago." A murmur of confusion rippled through the room. William's brow furrowed in bewilderment. "Sophia, what are you talking about?" With a nod to Rachel, Sophia began to lay out her case. She presented the documents from Harold's safety deposit box, explained the true origins of the Blackwell fortune, and revealed her own claim to a significant portion of the company's assets. As the truth unfolded, the reactions around the room ranged from disbelief to outrage. Victoria's face contorted with fury, while William seemed to age years before Sophia's eyes, the weight of his family's deception crushing down upon him. "This is preposterous!" Victoria shrieked, her composure finally shattering. "You can't possibly expect anyone to believe these lies." But the evidence was irrefutable. As the board members and shareholders pored over the documents, it became clear that Sophia's claim was not only valid but potentially devastating to the current Blackwell leadership. In the chaos that followed, with lawyers being summoned and emergency meetings called, Sophia found herself face to face with William for the first time since that fateful night in the garden. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me about this when we were together?" Sophia's heart broke at the pain in his eyes. "I didn't know, William. I only discovered the truth after I left. Your Uncle Harold, he left me the key to uncover all of this." William's jaw clenched at the mention of his uncle. "And now? What do you want, Sophia? To destroy my family? To take everything we've built?" Sophia reached out, gently taking William's hand in hers. "No, William. What I want is justice, for my family, yes, but also for you. You deserve to know the truth about your heritage, about the man your great-grandfather really was. And you deserve the chance to make things right." For a long moment, William stared at their joined hands, conflict raging in his eyes. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You're right," he said softly. "It's time for the lies to end." What followed was a whirlwind of legal negotiations, press conferences, and corporate restructuring. The truth about the Blackwell fortune sent shockwaves through New York society and the business world at large. Victoria, unable to face the disgrace, fled to Europe, while William stepped down as CEO to focus on making amends for his family's past misdeeds. Through it all, Sophia remained a steady presence, working tirelessly to ensure that justice was served without destroying the company that employed thousands of innocent people. She used her newfound wealth and influence to establish scholarships for underprivileged students, fund research into sustainable technologies, and create opportunities for those who had been marginalized by the old guard of New York's elite. As the dust began to settle, Sophia found herself once again in the gardens of the Blackwell estate. But this time, she walked not as an outsider, but as a woman coming into her own power and purpose. She found William by the rose bushes, looking more relaxed than she had seen him in months. The burden of secrecy lifted from his shoulders, he had thrown himself into the work of reforming Blackwell Enterprises, transforming it into a model of corporate responsibility. "Sophia," he said warmly as she approached. "I was hoping you'd come." They sat together on the same bench where, all those months ago, Harold had shared his wisdom about love and courage. For a while, they simply sat in companionable silence, watching the sun set over the manicured lawns. "I owe you an apology," William said finally. "For doubting you, for letting my mother's poison cloud my judgment. Can you ever forgive me?" Sophia turned to him, seeing in his eyes the man she had fallen in love with, flawed, yes, but fundamentally good and now tempered by humility and a determination to do better. "There's nothing to forgive," she said softly. "We've both been on a journey, William. What matters is where we go from here." William took her hand, his touch sending a familiar spark through her. "And where do we go from here, Sophia? After everything that's happened, everything we've been through, is there still a chance for us?" Sophia felt tears pricking at her eyes, but this time they were tears of hope, of possibility. "I think," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "that our story is far from over, William Blackwell. In fact, I think it's only just beginning." As William pulled her into a tender kiss, Sophia felt the last pieces of her world falling into place. She had faced adversity, uncovered long-buried truths, and emerged stronger for it all. The road ahead would not be easy, there were still wounds to heal, trusts to rebuild, and a legacy to reshape. But with love, determination, and the unshakable spirit that had carried her through her darkest hours, Sophia knew that she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In that moment, as the first stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, Sophia Martinez, once despised by her fiancé's family, now a force to be reckoned with in her own right, felt the full weight of her journey. From a humble waitress to the heir of a fortune, from an outsider to the catalyst for change, she had transformed not just her own life, but the lives of everyone around her. As she and William walked hand in hand back towards the house that would now be a home for both of them, Sophia smiled to herself. Her grandmother had been right all along, Martinez women didn't break easily. They rose, they fought, and ultimately, they triumphed. The future stretched out before them, full of promise and possibility. And Sophia was ready to write the next chapter of her story, not just as Mrs. William Blackwell, but as Sophia Martinez Blackwell, a woman who had found her strength, her voice, and her true place in the world. As they entered the grand foyer of the Blackwell mansion, now a symbol of redemption rather than oppression, Sophia was struck by how different everything looked through her new eyes. The portraits of stern-faced Blackwell patriarchs that had once intimidated her now seemed like relics of a bygone era, soon to be replaced by images that reflected the new, inclusive direction of the family and its enterprises. William squeezed her hand, sensing her thoughts. "We'll make this place our own," he said softly. "A home filled with love, honesty, and hope for the future." Sophia nodded, a warm smile spreading across her face. "And we'll use our resources to help others, to right the wrongs of the past and create opportunities for those who've been held back by circumstances beyond their control." In the weeks and months that followed, Sophia and William worked tirelessly to remake Blackwell Enterprises into a force for good. They established a foundation dedicated to supporting young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds, ensuring that no brilliant mind would be stifled by lack of opportunity as Sophia's great-grandfather had been. The company's focus shifted towards sustainable technologies and ethical business practices, quickly becoming a model for corporate responsibility in the 21st century. Sophia's innate understanding of the struggles faced by ordinary people, combined with William's business acumen, proved to be a powerful force for change. Their wedding, when it finally came, was a far cry from the ostentatious affair Victoria had once envisioned. Instead, it was a joyous celebration that brought together people from all walks of life. Sophia's grandmother, Elena, beamed with pride as she watched her granddaughter walk down the aisle, the Martinez family's legacy of strength and perseverance embodied in every step. Harold Blackwell, frail but determined, was there to see his great-nephew marry the woman who had brought truth and redemption to their family. As he raised a toast to the happy couple, his eyes twinkled with satisfaction at a long-held dream finally realized. Even James Rodriguez was in attendance, now heading up Blackwell Enterprises' innovative new tech division. He and Sophia had managed to salvage a friendship from the ashes of their past, proving that with maturity and understanding, even the most painful of histories could be overcome. As for Victoria, she eventually returned from her self-imposed European exile, humbled by the exposure of her family's secrets and the realization of the harm her actions had caused. It was a long and difficult road, but slowly, with Sophia's compassionate guidance and William's unwavering support, she began the process of making amends and rebuilding relationships. Years passed, and the Blackwell Martinez legacy continued to grow and evolve. Sophia and William welcomed children of their own, raising them with a deep appreciation for their complex heritage and a strong sense of responsibility to use their privilege for the greater good. Sophia never forgot her roots, regularly returning to her old neighborhood in the Bronx to mentor young women and support community initiatives. She became a beacon of hope for those who dared to dream beyond their circumstances, a living testament to the power of perseverance, integrity, and love. On quiet evenings, Sophia would often find herself in the Blackwell Estate's library, surrounded by the books that had once seemed so intimidating. As she ran her fingers along the spines, she would smile at the new editions, volumes on social justice, environmental sustainability, and ethical business practices, standing proudly alongside the old leather-bound tomes of financial theory. In those moments, she would reflect on the incredible journey that had brought her to this point. From a struggling waitress to the co-leader of a corporate empire, from an outsider despised by her fiancé's family to a beloved catalyst for change. She had faced adversity with courage, uncovered truth with determination, and transformed not just her own life, but the lives of countless others. She had proven that true strength comes not from wealth or status, but from the power of the human spirit to overcome, to grow, and to love. As the sun set on another day of purpose and fulfillment, Sophia Martinez Blackwell stood at the window of her study, gazing out at the city she now helped shape. She thought of her grandmother's words from so long ago, "Martinez women do not break easily." With a heart full of gratitude and a mind focused on the work yet to be done, Sophia smiled. She hadn't just avoided breaking, she had soared. And as William joined her at the window, wrapping his arms around her in a gesture of love and partnership, Sophia knew that this was more than just a happy ending. It was a new beginning, a launch pad for a future filled with possibility, compassion, and the enduring power of love to overcome all obstacles. In that moment, as the first stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, Sophia realized that her story, their story, was far from over. It was, in fact, a tale that would inspire generations to come, a testament to the transformative power of truth, perseverance, and the courage to fight for what's right, no matter the odds. And so, as night fell over New York City, the legend of Sophia Martinez Blackwell, once despised, now revered, once an outsider, now a leader, once lost, now triumphantly found, continued to unfold, a beacon of hope in a world always in need of inspiration and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.